All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first Sober Curious Yoga podcast panel episode. I am super excited because we have a cross-continental Sober Curious Yoga panel that has come together, four of your mindful life practice teachers, including me. So I'm here with Matt, who is in the UK, Jules, who is in the UK, and Lee, who's in the States, who all of you have probably heard on a previous podcast episode. And I'll put the links to all of their episodes in the show notes if anyone wants to go back and listen and hear their individual stories. And today we are going to be talking as a group about the subject around telling family and friends that you are going alcohol free, because it's a pretty common thing that comes up, how to navigate relationships, how to navigate social dynamics. So I'm super excited to have the panel here. And I was wondering if each person could kind of introduce themselves and share a little bit about who they are, kind of their journey before we get into it.
Hi, hello. I'm Matt. And I'm in the UK. I live in London. I've lived in London for about 20 years, and I have a wife and 3 lovely daughters. I'm a primary school teacher, and I do a lot of work with computers at school, and I'm starting to work with children who have quite difficult backgrounds and stuff like that. And I've not drunk alcohol for, I think it's 472 days today, since May last year. So I'm reaping all the benefits of that. It's great.
I'll go. So I'm Jules. I'm also in the UK, in Bristol. I live with my partner and his 2 children and our dog. And I work, I suppose, in sort of arts and well-being and community development. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, so I do lots of different wearing of hats. And I've been sober coming up to 21 months. And yeah, it's been an adventure. It really has.
My name's Lee, and I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. I am recently retired from my work as an occupational therapist, and I worked with children with sensory processing disorder. And I am married. My 3 children are all out of college now and living on their own, and they live far away from us. So we're on a journey right now figuring out where we want to live. And so then I started doing the yoga teacher training, and I've started teaching, and that's kind of my new passion. And I spend a lot of time each day working on yoga, practicing yoga, and reading about yoga, and I love it so much. So that's kind of my new occupation, I guess. And it really aligns very well with what I did before in looking at how the nervous system impacts our functioning in everyday life. And I did that with children with sensory processing disorder and helping them get into a regulated state. And so yoga kind of really fits in nicely with that.
I love how you put down the talking stick.
Put down the stick.
You're so used to it.
Oh, I didn't talk about my sober journey. I am a year and a half sober. I forgot to say that. And I feel like it's just like become so much part of my life now. And it's been like a really key habit change area for me. So I love it. I love being sober too.
I like the way we've all described the length of time sober in different ways. I went for days, Jules went for months, and Lee's gone for like a year and a half. Or whatever.
Yeah, good noticing.
Yeah. I don't know the days unless I look at the app. And
I actually deleted the app off my computer or my phone because it was taking up too much space. And so when my most Googled thing is like days since April 13th, I Google it all the time, and I really should just re-download the app. But yeah, it's amazing how the days had so much value to me at the beginning. And then as time went on, it just became part of who I am. But a big amount of days sounds cool. It sounds very impressive.
Yeah, when Matt, when you...
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that you have those milestone days, and I think I've been sort of hanging on to 500 days. And I think once I get to that, I'm sort of, I'm probably okay then, not to worry about it as much or think about it as much.
Yeah,
I think you're right. I think I got to 500 and then I just think I stopped counting. I think 500 was my, I'm going to get there. that's my goal, is to get to 500. And yeah, I sort of got to a point where I don't know anymore. And then when I do look it up, it gets really exciting to go, oh, I'm starting to get in the 700.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too.
I'm excited
My
for
most
1,000.
recent one was, oh, wow.
Coming up soon.
I was
100
excited
days.
to come up. I was excited to come up to a year and a half. That was like a big one for me just recently. And that was September 1st. So I just got there. So now I don't know what my next one that I'm going to look forward to is.
Oh, amazing. All right, so let's get into our subject. So I want to hear how everyone approached telling their family and friends that they were alcohol free.
Okay, I'll do it. Oh, I'll be grabbing it. So I was really, really quiet. I didn't really tell anyone for the first, I think it was for the first month. Didn't tell anyone because I wanted to explore what it meant for me first before I talked to other people. It was such a personal journey. I'd done dry Januaries and dry months previously. And I was actually quite loud about that. I'd be like, yeah, I'm doing dry January, and look at all the gin I've got lined up afterwards.
Yeah.
Whereas this time, because I knew that I was like, this is going to be it now, I want to stop, and I don't want to moderate, I don't want to restart. So I was really quiet and private about it, and the only person that knew was my partner, and he was really supportive. We did dry January together. And to be honest, most of his drinking is very, very little. So he didn't really drink at all for the first couple of months. And then I started telling one or two really, really close friends just to sort of sound it out with them. And the really close friends were very supportive. I think I was very choosy in who I shared my experience with, because I knew that it was very much my stopping alcohol was very much in connection with my mental health. So I knew that I wanted to be very conscious about how I shared, what I talked about, and who I talked with. And it's only, I think, I don't know, the last couple of months really that I've just started talking about it with friends who I'm not so close to, because I feel really strong now. I don't feel any sort of fear or concern or ask questions, ask me any questions about being alcohol free, because I feel very, very strong in my sobriety. But it took me, I think, about over a year. I didn't talk about it on social media at all, and I still don't on Facebook. I've only just started talking about it on Instagram, and that's nerve-wracking. And I think I started talking about it because I knew I was going to do a podcast, and I just thought, I'm just going to let it out now because I'm going to be on a podcast. But for me, it was definitely a very private journey at the beginning, and then I started making lots of friends and contacts within and connections within the alcohol-free world, where I could actually talk about being alcohol-free rather than sort of trying to say it to people and then people not really getting it or thinking I've got some kind of serious hardcore problem. I was able to connect with new friends really across the world, and able to be honest rather than like hiding stuff and going, oh yeah, I'm not drinking. I could actually be genuine and authentic about talking about my experience because I knew that they'd empathise and understand. And now that I feel very strong in it, it's like, it's just not an issue. If somebody asks, I'm just like, I don't drink alcohol. I don't explain why, because it's not your business. It's mine.
I find it a really complex question. And as you're talking, Jules, I do have some similarities to you, but I'm at a point where I'm still sort of almost predicting what people are thinking about me and the fact that I don't drink. I find it a quite hard question to answer because when I stopped drinking in May last year, we were sort of in this sort of lockdown period of time and I wasn't seeing a lot of people. And so I, like you, have not said anything really on Facebook about it, but I've really trying to create this space on Instagram, which I think is a nicer space. And I think when I sort of took on the sober yoga dad kind of handle, thanks Alex for that, it sort of started to come out through there with friends, but no one says anything to you about it. No one sort of, says, what's this all about then? And the only people I really feel like who know about it are my next door neighbours who are really good friends. And quite recently, one of them said, "Oh, are you going to have a drink to celebrate if you win the football?" Because there's a big football tournament on. And my daughter was like, "No, he's not. He doesn't drink." And that sort of really cemented it. Someone in my family noticing, the good that's come of it. And I'm still not at a point where I'll say I don't drink forever. But I'm like you, Jules, I don't drink. That's it. And people, I guess, know that about me, but very few people sort of comment or say, "Oh, what's happening with you?" And, maybe they'll talk about the yoga, because I talk about that a lot. And then I went to a wedding recently, and some old friends, I spoke to them, and they were quite sort of supportive of it, actually, and realized, how good it had made me feel. But I always have this sneaking suspicion that other friends think I'm going through a bit of a weird phase of my life and not enjoying life as much because I'm not drinking. And that might be me being a bit paranoid, but I've got a sense of that about certain people, like they're enjoying their life more than me. I feel that. So it's quite complex for me.
I definitely had similarities to both of you. Well, I think all three of us stopped during the pandemic. I stopped March 1st, well, sort of January 1st, but then I drank in February. And so my real stop date I consider to be March 1st. And felt like that made it easier for me because I didn't have to be around people socially to tell people. Like, I didn't have to explain why I wasn't drinking at a party or out to dinner, why I wasn't having a glass of wine or whatever. I just was home pretty much. And my husband knew. And I think my kids knew right away, but I really didn't tell many other people. I remember we used to, at the beginning of the pandemic, have these Zoom happy hours with my girlfriends, or my husband and I would get together with another couple and do like a Zoom party night at the beginning of the pandemic, and game night or something. And I would always at those sort of pretend to be drinking. So I would either have a mocktail or I would have an NA beer, and I would turn the label so that it didn't show to the camera. And that was my way of kind of fudging that I was drinking. Or I'd pour myself a glass of red NA wine and participate in the, it looked like I was drinking wine. So I never had to say to anybody, "I'm not drinking." And I do remember at one of all my girlfriends, a happy hour one night, and I had made myself a mocktail, and people were all talking about, "What cocktail did you make? What did you make? What did you make?" And I said I made a mocktail. And so I don't remember, that might have been a month in or something like that. And then another one of my friends said she made a mocktail also. And I was like, "Oh, I'm not the only one." But that friend was just particularly trying to be careful because of coronavirus and keeping her immune system really healthy. So she had stopped, but she doesn't drink much anyway. So, it wasn't that unusual, but I think I did it that way. And so really it was really important to have a community that I could talk to, but I didn't really have one. Like, I just had kind of my husband, and I had a Facebook group that I was in, but I wasn't going to meetings or having any kind of dialogue with people. And I felt like that was really a void for me. And it wasn't until like in the end of June that I found Alex. So that was March, April, May, June. So 4 months in that I found Alex's group and started to do the sober circles. And that really helped me to have a voice behind it. And that, I think, is what gave me more courage to put it on social media. I never had put anything about it on social media, but I think that gave me more courage. And by then it had gradually leaked out. Like, I mean, I wasn't like intentionally like, "Oh, I'm going to sit you down and tell you, one of my friends, that I'm not drinking anymore." Just if it would come out naturally in conversation. It wasn't like I was hiding it. But there were some people I was definitely more nervous about telling. And I did find just recently having a conversation with someone who I was more nervous about talking about it with. And that person was asking me like, "Well, what was the point? What was the turning point for you? What was the point? Was there something that happened that made you stop?" And I think that person was trying to compare himself to me and see has he gotten to that point yet or not of like, do I need to stop? Was there like something really bad that happened that to you that made you want to stop? And have I reached that point myself yet? That's kind of interesting to look at, but that wasn't what happened to me. I just kind of heard like people talking about this. Well, I've shared in the podcast with Alex about Rich Roll and hearing Andy Ramage, and that was what, like kind of that middle lane drinking and how it's just all the benefits of it. And I thought, I'm going to try this and just see. So it wasn't like there was one bad thing that happened. So I was able to share that.
It's really interesting because all of you getting sober in the pandemic, I think, had a very different experience from me, because I got sober before the pandemic and a year before the pandemic. And so I was navigating all these parties. And I remember the first week of my sobriety, they had this event where it was like free first round of beer for every teacher. And I was 4 days sober and everyone was like, come on, why aren't you coming? Because I was like the last man standing, always doing the stupidest things on these nights. Like I was the girl serving the gin and vodka. And I literally had to not go because everyone was like, just have one, it's free. And I'm like, I'm literally 4 days sober. This is a huge deal. Like, I really can't come to the bar. And so for me, it had to be, there was no tiptoeing around it. And I think that probably is just the contrast from who I was and who I was trying to be was just so great that, it's not that they were trying to pressure me. They just wanted me just to be the drunk Alex at the party that, they loved. And I just didn't want to be that person anymore. And so I found that I had to address it really quickly.
I think that, so I got stopped drinking in the January of 2020. So I had a couple of months, but I actually treated that time as though I was in lockdown. I just didn't leave the house. So we had from January to March, I was in my own lockdown. I basically treated myself as though I was in some kind of recovery and would stay in the conservatory and just yoga every day and do my meditation and journal. So even though I was actually not drinking before lockdown, I knew that I couldn't go out. I couldn't go to pubs. I couldn't put myself in vulnerable situations. It's a bit like when I stopped smoking. When I stopped smoking, I decided to just not be around anybody that smoked. So I stopped going to pubs. I don't think I went to a pub for about 3 months, just because I knew that I didn't want to put myself into a vulnerable position. And what I did do is I joined a really swanky gym and a swanky place where I can go and get jacuzzi. So instead of like socialising in the pub, which is what I used to do, I now socialise in jacuzzis. So, alcohol-free life, you get jacuzzi.
I love that. So I'm wondering, did anyone have any friends that they lost when they went alcohol-free?
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say I'm that aware of it at the moment. I've sort of put myself in a position that, I think they feel like they wouldn't hang out with me as much. And I'm thinking of some of my colleagues at school. I was always the one going down the pub on a Friday after school, having 4 or 5 beers as quickly as I could. And, I'm looking back on it, I would sort of instigate, sort of seeing if anyone wanted to go for a drink to the pub. And if they didn't, I'd go by myself anyway. And those people I probably won't see as much. But, I've met 10 times as many people since from not drinking. So I'm not that worried about it. I'm more worried about the ones who do continue drinking. And, that I know some of them should stop drinking. So I feel sort of concerned for those people that way. I'm also with men and women, it's different. I don't know, it's interesting, obviously, me being the only man here, how it's different for women. There's certain men, I probably won't hang out with very much again in my life. And that's the stark fact of it, of not drinking. That the things I would do with them, would involve drinking, and that's ended. People I used to play football with, people I go to concerts with, although I've had the odd message saying, oh, it's really good what you're doing with your life and stuff, I won't see them again. And so that's quite a stark reality of life, isn't it? Unless they stop drinking, that's it. So there's a little bit of sadness there, I suppose. But yeah, I can, in my mind now, I'm thinking of names of people and I'm seeing them. So yeah, I don't know what anyone thinks about that.
I think for me, what also happened is when I stopped drinking, I started my boundaries. I started getting really clear on my boundaries. I think my boundaries were so more wobbly before I stopped drinking. So I think it was an overall thing. I think it wasn't just me being alcohol free, but it was also me not being as people pleasy as I used to be, and as yes person. Somebody would say, could you do this for me? Could you do that for me? And I'd be like, yes, yes, yes. And I'd constantly give my time and my energy. And then when I became alcohol free, it's like everything shifted. It wasn't just about giving up alcohol, but it was a massive shift in my life, the way that I treat myself, the way that I reserve my energy for myself, the way that I eat, the way that I exercise, like everything shifted. And it wasn't just a big, now I'm going to stop being this and now I'm going to do that. It was gradual. It was very gradual. But what I noticed most was when I started asserting my boundaries and advocating for myself, that's when I lost friends. And people didn't like the fact that I wasn't silly, funny, drunk Jules. That actually, that a lot of the time now I like to be quiet and I like to meditate and I like to rest and I read lots of books, and that is very different from how I used to be. I used to be very sort of wild, feral, and I'm, that wildness and feralness is still in me, but I have calmed down a lot and a lot more grounded. And I think that can make people fearful. So it's not just about the alcohol-free journey, it's about the self-development journey that I personally feel that when I stopped drinking, I upped my self-development. I've been doing it before, but not at the level I'm doing it now. So my conversation changes and the way that I talk, the language that I use. Sometimes I feel I'm talking a foreign language to people.
Yeah.
They don't speak maybe in the way that I'm actually not able to say a sentence. But I often, the things that are really important to me, I just can't have conversations with people that maybe aren't on that self-development journey because they just are not interested or don't get it or confused by it. So I think it wasn't just about giving up alcohol. I think it was the whole kit caboodle, the way that I've very much changed my life, and that scared people. And for some people it was too much. I think it was a fear of that they would look at me and think, well, is she not going to like me anymore because I'm still like this? And I personally didn't feel like that. This is my journey alone. How I'm taking care of myself is just purely for me. So yeah, I think it was me starting to learn that I've got boundaries. That was actually the big shift around friendships. And I've sadly lost quite a lot of friends, but I've also gained beautiful connections and beautiful friends. And some of the friends I have had, our friendships have grown and are much more authentic and are much more real rather than drunken. Those drunken chats that you think you're sharing stuff, but actually you're just drunk.
Yeah.
Jules, do you think that people think you're a bit more boring now? Because that's what I feel about people with me. I think, and it's really weird actually, because I keep thinking about my neighbours who are next door here, and I keep thinking that they just think I'm not as happy. It's my projection of what they think, and it's just not true. I mean, I still go through the anxieties of life and, dips, but I'm way happier. Everything's clearer. Everything makes sense, and I can see it. And you talk about saying no and knowing your boundaries. Yeah, I'm so clear. I've been saying it actually today. I just need to not be as nice to people because I help. I'm a people pleaser and the alcohol fuels that. but I do think in a sense it might project as not being as happy and joyful a person, but it's more of a complete person, right?
Yeah, I feel much more grounded and calm. And when I was drinking, and especially at the sort of the height in my 30s, when I was very wild, you know, people might perceive me as someone that was really out there and doing stuff and really wild and crazy, but they didn't see what was hidden underneath, which was a lot of, you know, mental health issues and a lot of things that I wasn't able to understand. Whereas now it's like I feel much more calmer and grounded. So when I'm actually in my happiness, it's much more like a gentle happiness. It's like a softer happiness, and I can still have that wildness and craziness, but at a much more, I don't know, just loving, just a much more loving level to myself, and I don't put myself in danger. And you know, I think about some of the things that I used to do, which were not boring, they were bonkers. Really dangerous. And I look now and go, oh my God, I would never put myself in that position.
Yeah. I don't feel like I lost friends. I was really worried I wouldn't get invited to things. And of course, there really haven't been many things to get invited to, but I was worried about that. I do think that the friendships that I have have gotten to a different level because of being sober, and not just like what Jules was saying, not just the sobriety, but the introspective journey that I'm on, and journaling and learning about different things and thinking about philosophy and spirituality and all of that has come along with it for me. I definitely think a lot of my relationships have changed. I just recently spent a lot of time with my son and his girlfriend, and they don't drink. And it was really fun. Like we would have dinner and then we would play a game almost every night. Some kind of, our big fun game was Monopoly Deal. It's a card game and it's just silly, but you know, it's like, I used to think like, I've thought about the time that we spent with them, and I thought I would have probably, when I was drinking, have thought of people who would do something like that as kind of boring. Like, how could you sit through a game night without a glass of wine or without drinks or something? And we had a lot of fun playing just simple games together. And I thought it was really nice. But I did have recently, someone did tell me that they miss the part of me, the drinking me, that was a little wild and crazy. I was the dancing, you know, bonkers person passing the shots of fire. You know, I'd have a bottle of Fireball and be passing it around to everybody in the room and dancing to the Fireball song, and pretty wild. And so I think people who I've done that with kind of miss that. Although I did dance to Fireball at the wedding I went to recently. So I still love to dance sober. So I don't have an inhibition about dancing, but I'm just not pushing alcohol anymore. So, well, while I'm doing it.
It's really interesting knowing people as sober, because I can't imagine that of you, Lee, you know, because, you know, we sort of all know each other as non-drinkers. All these kind of thoughtful people probably, and, you know, the way we talk and think about life. Yeah, and you sort of get a sense that wasn't the real you, and I don't even know you then. So it's, maybe our friends are discovering what the real us is, and it's not pleasant for them. I've certainly had that with people where they're talking to me and they're justifying their drinking and the things they do as being sort of okay, and looking for that reason why, you know, I stopped drinking. Yeah.
Well, that kind of leads us into the next question, which is how did people's relationships change when they quit drinking?
Silence. There's a lot of silence. In terms of relationship with people I'm really close to, you know, they got a lot better. You know, my family, you know, think I'm a much better person. And I was a pretty decent person before, but I'm a much, much better person. So relationships are closer. You know, there's sort of more sort of genuine love and kind of gratitude for life and everything I have. So my relationships are better. They're more real, they're more genuine. But actually, they're with a lot of new people, and I'm starting to see my life is sort of phased. This is quite a big chunk of my life now, and it's a new life. So I'm making new relationship with people, being more genuine, and then, yeah. I mean, I suppose I would imagine probably half the people I used to hang around with there will go. So I'm rambling on a bit here. What was the question again?
How did your relationships change?
I definitely think I'm kinder to my husband in particular, because he's the person who always takes the brunt of, when I get irritable or annoyed about something. I feel it feels safe to me, or it has felt safe to me to take it out on him. And I don't think it's just sobriety. I think it's also doing a lot of mindfulness and meditation and stuff that I think before I act. Not always. I'm far from being perfect about that. I still, I know at one point I said something mean to him. I don't know, it was maybe 6 months ago or something. And he was like, how come you're doing all this yoga and you're still mean? How can it be you could still be like this, And I was like, well, I'm not perfect. I'm still human, and I'm working on it. So it's all a work in progress, but it gave me a lot to reflect on. And I remembered what I did the next day that I was upset with him about. Before, we used to get in arguments. He would be really mad, and I'd wake up the next day and he'd be really pissy with me. And I was like, what did I do? I didn't even remember. I had said something mean and I was blacked out, or who knows what. I didn't remember saying whatever I said. And then he would tell me and I'd be like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that, but I don't know. So at least I can remember it and reason with him why I think I acted the way I did. And it's helped me. And I think it hasn't really happened as much in the last 6 months, but every now and then something, we all get irritable, right? And annoyed about things still.
I think with my partner, we didn't really drink very much together. We're not my partner's not a big drinker. But it was with my ex-husband I had, massive drinking binges with. And I knew that when we broke up, I knew that we couldn't be together for all variety of reasons. But one of them was our drinking. We lived on a boat. We had quite a sort of arty, hippie life. And it was acceptable, just to spend every night drinking around the fire, which was lovely. But, you can't do that forever. So I think when I met my partner, I didn't actually drink. I'd just done my yoga teacher training, so I wasn't actually drinking. And so our relationship, I don't think has ever really been about alcohol. We would have a bottle of wine on a Friday night, but that's it. It was very sort of moderate drinking. And my drinking over the past couple of years has been moderate, but my partying and my wildness was more with my friends or alone. If my partner was away, that was my excuse to get drunk and to lose myself and to take off the Mary Poppins mask and have my wild self. So I think my relationship hasn't necessarily changed. I just think I'm more conscious about my behaviour now. And I think my partner was actually surprised that I was doing this because he didn't see me as a big drinker, but he didn't know the other parts of me. Mm-hmm. I think actually I've been able to be more honest with him and say, actually, I really was a big drinker. I used to binge a lot. I used to black out a lot. And I think because he's only seen me as either moderate or not drinking, our relationship has been very much about alcohol just hasn't been part of our relationship. So I think for me, if I was in that relationship that I used to be with my ex-husband, whenever I tried to stop drinking, it just wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. So I didn't have any support at all. And I was mocked for giving up drinking. So actually being in a healthy relationship and a loving relationship has really supported me to be sober.
I also was thinking about just friendships and not just my husband. And I think that the friends that I have that are really supportive of me not drinking are the ones that have gotten really deeper in my friendship, and I feel like are more the true friends for me. So they're the ones that I will seek out, like, for doing things with. And I find I do different things with my friends now. Like, we'll go for a walk together instead of meeting at the bar for a drink, or go for a bike ride, or
Yeah, I've got the jacuzzi. That's where I invite my friends. I've actually had, I think, 4 friends who've become alcohol free or have moderated their drinking, not because of necessarily me, but I hope that they've seen the difference and the shift in me and the changes. And when I talk about not drinking, how much it's benefited me. And, a couple of them have decided to not drink at all. There's 1 or 2 that are moderating, but we're actually having honest, authentic conversations about alcohol. And these were quite wild women. I was like saying to one of them recently, we went out for dinner and I was just saying, oh my God, imagine this a couple of years ago, we'd be on the table and, putting a bottle of wine here and a bottle of wine there and throwing food at each other. Very much sort of Real Housewives style. And and now we were sitting there with our water and our sparkling elderflower and just having really lovely conversations. And I never told her to not drink. I never did that, and I'd never do that to anybody, and I'd never have that conversation. I'd never bring that up because everyone's got their own personal journey. But when people started coming to me, and I've had, since I did the podcast, I've had about 20 odd people contact me saying, I didn't know that was your experience, Jules. That's my experience as well. Or I wanted to give up drinking. And I think that's amazing. And, that's why I'm doing this, because I just think if there's one person that goes, do you know what, maybe I want to try this.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. I think when I was in the thick of it, if someone had said to me, you should stop drinking, I would be drinking more. I would be like, I'll show you. So I think knowing that my friends know that I'm a safe person to talk to about it, and that I'll give them, some pointers, some ideas and suggestions, but I'd never give any judgment on people's drinking because it's not my business. It's not my place. And everyone's on their personal journey about it.
Definitely.
I feel a responsibility in a way to talk about it more, because I would like people I know to have a go not drinking, because I know it'd be amazing for them. And, people always come into my mind when I think of this. And unlike you, Jules, I'm not going to go up to people and say, you'd stop drinking, it will be good for you. But I do feel there's a sense that I've been sort of more and more vocal on Instagram about it, and I think some people are probably thinking, God, I wish he'd stop going on about bloody sober yoga, rubbish, and just pipe down. But my thinking on that is that people for years have gone and about how much they drink and how fun it is. So I don't really care, but I really do hope that. On the back of me not drinking, some people are drinking less. And, one person to my relationships, my wife drinks way less. And she wasn't a big drinker anyway, but I was the one that keeping it going in our house. Now there's very little alcohol in the house and she drinks very rarely. And when she does drink, I really see what was happening to me when I was drinking, and that's been really sort of revelatory to me to see how your life slows down very quickly once you've had a couple of glasses of wine. And I watch her and other people, and it's absolutely mind-blowing to see that from a sober perspective, because I've never had that before. So I have made an impact on people, and I think that's really something that I'd like to continue doing, but not by, like you say, Jules, and I'm sure you're the same, Lee and Alex, not by saying you shouldn't drink, it's great for you, just by showing them what's happening to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I actually was reading a Facebook memory the other day of, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, my testimonial came out for 1 year no beer, and I had written since I became public about my sobriety, 3 people have told me that they were inspired by my story. And I read that and I was like, wow, 3. And that was 2 years ago. And here we are now. And it's just like the more that you share your own story. I think it was Brene Brown who said, if you share your story, it might become someone else's survival guide. And I think that really is the power in telling our stories.
Yeah.
All right, we have one last. Oh, sorry.
I was just saying it's about being a lighthouse. When I first stopped, I met so many lighthouses in various communities and spaces, and none of them told me what I should do or how I should do it or a route to go, but they just showed a light through their own paths. And there are so many people out there that are amazing lighthouses. So I just think if we can find ways to be lighthouses to others, I just think, then it means that people have sort of people to look at and go, wow, if they can do it, maybe I can do it. Mm-hmm. And even if they don't do it, it doesn't matter. We're just living our own lives in the best way that we possibly can anyway.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. I have one last question for everyone. If on the subject of advice, if someone was asked for advice, we'll put it that way. If someone asked for advice, because we don't give unwanted advice in Sober Curious Yoga, but if someone wanted advice on how to navigate their relationship with their family and friends in the beginning of their alcohol-free journey or at any point, what wisdom would you share?
I would say look for those natural points in conversation to bring it up with people. It's almost like when disciplining your children and you find natural reinforcers or whatever to make it more impactful to them. But I think I wouldn't press it on anybody. I would just kind of let it take its natural course. And as you go along, I think at least my experience was, like I said, I gained more confidence to start sharing it more. I try not to be preachy, but just share my experience or something that I find inspiring on social media or whatever. But I wait for people to ask me.
Yeah, same. As I said, with my experience, I've had people ask me, and that's when I might say something, and I might not even go into massive details. But I think the most important thing is, for me, I thought, why am I telling that person? Why do they need to know? Do they need to know because I'm asking for support? Do they need to know because I'm going to go somewhere and I'm going to be drinking alcohol-free drinks? So my thinking was, do I need to tell that person? Is it their business? And if I do tell them, if they don't give me the reaction that I'm wanting, if they don't go, oh my God, that's brilliant, I have to manage that. They might have a reaction that is painful to me or hurtful, or most of the reactions have been not bothered. Most people have been like, oh right.
Yeah.
I'm actually not interested. That's actually been the main reaction. People is when I say to people I'm alcohol free, they just go, all right. It's not interesting. There was nobody that went, oh my God, I didn't experience that. But yeah, I would think really carefully about who you tell, how you say it to people, and why. What do you want to get out of it? That'd be my thoughts.
I would say my advice to people would be prepared from your family and friends for sort of questions coming back at you about, are you okay? What's wrong with you? I didn't know you had a drink problem. That's what's going to come up, right? That's what you're going to get. That's what people are thinking. Even people you used to go out with, what are they thinking about you? And sort of being prepared for that. I would say that's something I would advise people, especially about family as well. Parents may be worried, siblings may be, whoa, they've got a drink problem, or had a drink problem. I would say that's the thing to be aware of. You sort of how you frame it with those people. based on what they may be thinking about you and your life because of alcohol. But I'm not really sure how to sort of advise someone about what they should say, because everyone's family is different. You know, there might be someone in their family who has a drinking problem, or, you know, or something along those lines. So it's you know, different for everybody. It's an obvious answer, but it is true.
Yeah, I guess the safest way to approach it is just to talk about your own experience and not to project to someone else what they should do, but just talk about what, you know, your own, what's happened to yourself and what your experience has been.
Well, this was amazing. I had so much fun. It was like chatting with friends. Well, it was chatting with friends. These are all my friends. But this was our first episode of our Sober Curious Yoga panel, and we are going to be coming out with more episodes. So if anyone listening to this has any topics or subject matters or questions that you would like us to talk about, we would love to hear them. And you know where to find us. So send us a message on, I'll put my email or social media, and we're excited to have our next panel episode and talk more about sobriety.
Thanks, Alex.
Does anyone have anything
you.
they want to say to feel complete? Silence. All right.
I'm going to be going off to a yoga class, so I'm just really conscious that I want to go to the yoga class now.
Oh yeah, you gotta go. Gretchen's Kundalini. All right, we'll let you get going.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Thanks, everyone.